All right. Hi, everybody. This is Chris Campbell, Vice President of Content and Client Relationships at the Food Institute, and welcome to our webinar, Transformational Food Service Trends, Trusting Your Data Partners. We're going to have a great panel discussion today about digital transformation in the food service space, data security, and a whole bunch of other digital initiatives. But before we get started, I did want to thank the sponsor of today's event, and that is iTradeNetwork. For over 25 years, iTradeNetwork has been at the forefront of the supply chain industry, and their journey began with a simple yet powerful purpose: to feed the world. Today, they stand tall with a legacy of providing advanced supply chain solutions backed by best-in-class expertise and support. And to learn more about their capabilities, please visit iTradeNetwork.com. I'd also like to take care of a little housekeeping to start us off. First of all, yes, we will be sending out a recording of this presentation, so keep an eye on your inbox in the coming days for that link. And time permitting, we will be hosting a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to add your questions in the Q&A tab on the side of your screen. And like I said, we're going to have a jam-packed conversation today, so I'm quickly going to run through the presenters here. So from General Mills, we have Melissa Lee. From Gordon Foodservice, we have Chelsea Kuyper. From Foodbuy, we have Ken Davis. And from iTrade, we have Nathan Romney. And like I said, we're going to dive right in here today. And the first question is going to go over to Melissa, just to give everybody in the audience an idea of how we're going to be handling this. We're going to be asking some specific questions of each of the panelists to start off to give a better idea of their role in the supply chain, what they do with their companies. Then we're going to jump into more generalized questions at the end. So, Melissa, thanks for starting off here with us. And I think the first question we can ask is just how much more important has e-commerce become in the post-pandemic period in the food service sector? And maybe even more pertinently, has it kept up in importance as things have somewhat normalized, which is a word I know we don't love to use all that often, but we're in that new normal now. So let's start off there, Melissa. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. Thanks so much, Chris, for having me. According to our industry benchmark, about 70% or more of operators are engaging in ordering online from distributor portals. Making it easy and engaging with our operators digitally with the right products at the right time to drive growth and efficiencies continues to matter. We leverage DDSN, which is Global Data Synchronization Network, to exchange our standardized product master data with our distributor and buying group partners. And additionally, we collaborate with our partners based upon their individual requirements for data sharing.
Perfect. And moving right along here, Chelsea, from the distributor side, you have to work with a lot of different companies. I'm just wondering, what kind of data security standards do you uphold when you're working with these different companies? What can you tell us about that kind of relationship and the data sharing on that front?
So at Gordon Foodservice, we generally follow the approach of the principle of least privilege, and then security in layers to ensure that access to data is protected and secured. From an internal perspective, we run campaigns to ensure the right data is accessible by the right people. Being in the EDI space, we transact with a lot of third-party systems. We are only accepting secure communication protocols moving forward and actively upgrading all other communication protocols. In this age, new technology is constantly advancing, and as customers bring forth new third-party softwares, we get curious with them and try to get an understanding on how the data is being used, and this is largely accomplished through system demos.
I think Chris might have froze.
I think we lost Chris.
Okay, well, your question.
I do. So next question up was, how do you leverage data to enhance business growth, customer satisfaction, and streamline your operations? I could talk about this all day, but I'll try to keep it to a fairly brief paragraph. We do a ton of analysis, purchasing and invoice data all the way down to the unit level to have a very clear understanding of what's being purchased by our units and how that's tracking against our compliance standards. We've also streamlined the products available to our units so they aren't having to hunt through large catalogs of data to find the right product that meets the specific spec. It helps us ensure our end product quality. We also work very closely with our distributors to track what we call slow and dead stock that we can move out of any proprietary slots that we may have at that distribution center. And that opens up a slot for us to bring in new products to support things, that are pertaining to wellness, local farm to fork, other critical initiatives for us. We do a lot of partnering with our distributors to help us ensure that product availability to our customers is good. There's also a really strong focus on the data around receiving and inventory at the unit level. so that we can ensure that, we're getting the products that we're being invoiced for, that we're not leaving money on the table when an item is rejected or shorted at the time of delivery because our unit's too busy to request a credit back. We're also working to improve visibility across our sectors and at the corporate level of what's sitting out there in all of our operations and inventories at any given time, in hopes that will help us better support FSMA. We can react to any food safety issues, et cetera. We do have the ability to immediately remove a product from being able to be ordered across all of our distribution network. But where we're lacking is knowing what was already purchased and whether that may still be sitting out there, actively served on the line or sitting on the shelf in that unit's inventory.
Great. I'll just jump in here. This is Brian Joyce, CEO of the Food Institute, and hopefully Chris will be back on in a few minutes, but we can go on to our next question. And this is for iTrade, Nathan. What are the key features that food service businesses should look out for in data management solutions?
Perfect. Well, thanks, Brian. Thank you for stepping in as well. Appreciate that. I get this question a lot, being a technology provider. When I think to data, I always go back to the foundation. And I think good data quality is king. You really have to have that strong foundation before you can go off and do any of the exciting things that you want to do, whether those are reporting on information, going into new markets, growing business. The foundation of that data is really critical to the success. And so when I say what features should you have, go to companies that can collect data for you. When they collect that data, they can do so in a very standardized way. They're not setting up something that's unique or specific. They can take information from one distributor, one operator, one manufacturer, or multiple, right, and provide that information in a way that's both streamlined and consistent, because the consistency of information, especially when you're trying to identify anomalies or trying to identify problems, becomes so paramount. Finally, you need that foundational mapping of information and enrichment of information. It's one thing to get data from a partner, from a vendor, from a different company, but if you can't intelligently interpret that data and map it back to something that's important to your organization, then it's useless, right? And so when you think about complex things like product SKUs across different companies, or even locations or end units, you need that type of provider that can come in, standardize that information, map it to something that's important for you, and then potentially even enrich that information, right? Take it to the next level by providing allergen data or providing additional context that makes that data more interesting. So get the foundation right, I guess, is the simple response. Make sure you choose a provider that can do that.
Great. Appreciate that, Nathan. And we're going to kick it back over to Melissa here. And so for the second question for Melissa, how important has digital transformation been to maintaining relationships with your customers?
Sure. If you think about the food service industry and digital transformation, there's continued recognition about the importance of digital shelf, and everyone is on a different journey. So we are at General Mills taking our best practices, including the many years we've spent and learnings from our retail business, and bringing them to our customers. We're seeing and hearing from our partners the increasing importance and investments they are making in e-commerce to engage digitally with their customers. And our role is to ensure that our products show up brilliantly online to help drive engagement and growth. And we do this through people, process, data, and technology so that our products and data are relevant, updated, accurate, and engaging. We're also in early stages of testing with Gen AI. So the way that we're leveraging Gen AI is through our product content and thinking through our optimization and efficiency opportunities. And so, our goal is really to make it easier to navigate and develop engaging content to find our products and order online through enhanced images, videos, product content, et cetera. And there really is a genuine interest out there. And we are finding unique opportunities and ways that we can partner and guide our partners along the journey with them.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. And as maybe as a follow-up question, you mentioned AI. When did the investments in AI start to happen for General Mills? Can you share a little bit about that and how there's so many different options there for Gen AI? Can you expand upon that?
I think many companies are looking at AI as the future opportunity space and doing a lot of testing and learning. And I would say, for for the area that I'm responsible for, it's really been in the last 6 months to a year in terms of those opportunities. But the first part of that was really identifying what those use cases are and what those problems we were trying to solve, and then seeing where AI was applicable and testing and trying.
Great. I appreciate that. And my next question is for Chelsea. How do you ensure your data remains timely and accurate? Is a hugely important question. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so I'm going to echo what Nathan said about the importance of the foundation of the data. And as requests across our partners are growing to access their data, it becomes more and more important. Whether we're communicating with vendors or customers, transmitting the correct data is crucial. And as more customers are leveraging supply chain related data to drive their business decisions, they're relying on Foreign Food Service to transmit accurate and timely information. We've seen the consequences of bad or late data and how that has impacted either the vendor, the distributor, or the customer. With this, we've put in system monitoring and escalation processes to head this off. And depending on the severity of the system alerts, this can look like on-call pages with specific response time SLAs.
Got it. Great. Thank you for that. And we're going to turn it over to Ken here. Can you share how data integration has helped in menu planning and managing food costs effectively?
Sure. So menu planning is not new to us, but having the data to base that menu planning off is a fairly recent development where the data's gotten to the quality that we feel like we can trust it. We've got the GS1 attributes associated with it now, so we can track allergens, we can get nutritional information, and that's really helpful. In the past, our menu management solution used what we just call generic units or generic ingredients. We had ketchup, we had sugar, we had I don't know, fresh green beans. And we used blended pricing for that. So we looked at an average cost for that product across our entire footprint and said, okay, well, this is the cost that we're going to use for menu forecasting and derive our food costs. We are actively working on an integration right now with our procurement platform to be able to make the products the units can actually purchase available. So when they're out there working with a menu, they're choosing items off of their order guide that they actually can buy from their distributor or distributors. This will give us a lot better nutritional value because we're looking or nutritional information because we're looking at the exact product that we're bringing in. It's going to give us much more accurate pricing because it is specific to that unit and that the accounts that unit is using to order from, which will help us also, from a food cost perspective. It's going to give us a lot higher accuracy again around nutritionals, diet restrictions, things like that. We rely very heavily on those managed order guides for ensuring that product quality and spec is maintained based on the type of the client. We've got a higher end dining unit. We probably don't want them serving the same dinner ham that we would serve in a K-12 location that has very specific nutritional requirements. So in short, for our units on a very tight budget, accurate food cost forecasting is critical for them.
And for those that might not know much about Foodbuy, how many partners do you have when we're talking about data integration? We're talking, I know that Foodbuy is a large organization. Anything you can share there?
Sorry, guys, you dropped out on me for a second.
Oh, sorry. So just to repeat the question, for those that might not know of Foodbuy, what can you share with us about the number of partners that you're currently integrated with when it comes to data management? Anything that you can share there?
It's literally in the high hundreds.
Yeah.
Foodbuy data is probably the most crucial information that we have at our disposal, and Chelsea can attest to it. We're sticklers when it comes to data. It's got to be clean. It's got to be accurate. It's got to be on time. Because we do rely so heavily on it. But yeah, we're integrated with quite a large number of distributors.
Yeah, it's impressive. All right, we're going to move it to Nathan. How can you address concerns about data security, especially given the sensitive nature of proprietary information?
Thanks, Brian. From our perspective, it really comes to trust. When you work with companies, some of that trust has to be earned, and you earn it right through doing and being the right steward of information. And that could be access controls, who has access to the data. It could be data encryption, right? Could be compliance to any local or even larger compliance requirements. But I don't want to kind of leave it just at the technology side. It's not just about technology or how the information is secured or stored. It's about aligning companies on common goals. You want a data provider that is aligned to your growth. You want a data provider that's maybe specific to the industry and understands some of the nuances. Food and beverage is different, right? Especially when you look at perishability, when you look at some of the problems that are inherent within this space. Assuming that good data stewardship is universal across different markets is incorrect. And so you're really looking for companies that have been there, that have done that, right? That understand data, have a leg probably both in the future as well as a leg in the past, and understand some of the things that have come forward, but are generally aligned to what your company wants to do with that information and what they want to do with that data.
Great. One of the things that I've noticed and what we've been covering here at the Food Institute is just the level of cyber attacks, right?
Oh.
Across like retailers, across food service, across manufacturers. It seems like the food industry is a key target, and it has been over the past 12 to 24 months. And maybe this will be a natural question for the group here. How have your organizations thought about data security in light of all the cyber attacks that we're seeing from multiple different sources, whether domestically or internationally? Is there something that, and we'll open it up to the group here, anything that in terms of best practices or what your organizations have done to make sure that the secure data is secure?
Yeah, I don't mind kicking that off, Brian. When I think to it, there's the basics that have to be done. And I mentioned a few of those, but encryption at rest. Just making sure that the data is being stored in a way that if it is compromised, right, is secure. Making sure that the right people have right access to that. I think where a lot of companies probably get this wrong is they don't properly segment, either from a security perspective, access, or even segment some of the controls associated with it. And so when you have a breach of some kind, they get access to a broader swatch of information than they really should have access to. And so, I really believe in segmenting the information, securing and testing that data becomes something that you have to do with frequency and you have to do with urgency. It can't just be something that you set up once and you forget. It has to be something that you're perpetually looking at, perpetually patching, perpetually upgrading. Those vulnerabilities as they come forward have to be managed aggressively, right? And as an organization, you just have to think security first, right? I think it's just a different idea. So much data has been created within the last 10 years. I think what they say as an example is 99% of all the data we consume has been created in the last 10 years. And so there's so much information that people are trying to get access to. It's just important for you to be very thoughtful and very mindful in that space.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, as from the operator standpoint, obviously we're a fairly good-sized company. We have a very large information security team. Couple of the things that we really focus on, obviously we've got some pretty strong language in our contracts with our vendors and trading partners that they have to meet very specific security requirements. We even go down to the level of doing penetration testing on the applications that, any third-party applications that we utilize with those partners. They're aware of it. It's not something we go in the background and do, but they know that we're looking at their system and trying to, discover whether there's vulnerabilities out there.
Great. Excellent.
For us, and in fact, I think this kind of leads into the next question, Brian, around kind of data harmonization and how do we think about protection of data. And so I can kind of take that. A lot of the common themes today has been around data stewardship, the importance of having trusted data, getting the foundation right. One of the ways, an important way that we do that here is we've established a data governance model. It's focused on data quality, including people, process, data, and technology. You hear me say that a lot because I believe it's beyond just the tech and the data, to ensure that our data is accurate, it's consistent, updated. This includes data standards, processes for ingestion, harmonization, data quality reviews. And we collaborate, as Ken was mentioning, closely with our partners based upon their needs, based upon their requirements. And we have a process to continuously update our data to ensure its accuracy and engaging content, from our distributor partner portals, as I mentioned before, as it relates specifically to our product data. And then for any new customer data source that we partner with our customers for, it's compartmentalized and firewalled, and it goes through, we have an internal set of approvals and secure information, designations, and attributions that we use to determine who has access to which pieces of information, as Nathan was alluding to before. So I think that's, the key is just making sure we have our internal set of processes and protocols in place, as well as really closely partnering with our customers to understand what their requirements are as well. And so that we're really truly collaborative when we think about the data security, data protection, et cetera.
Great, thank you for that. And I'll just remind everyone, if you have any questions for our esteemed panelists, please put them in the Q&A chat area, and we'll address those towards the end of the webinar. Just moving on here for Chelsea, what platforms does Gordon Foodservice use to connect with other companies?
So technically speaking, the platforms Gordon Foodservice uses to connect with other companies, from an EDI perspective, we use Clio. And then for API integrations, we use Apogee. Business transformation has been at the forefront of Gordon Foodservice priorities over the past few years, having successfully deployed a new ERP system with the focus on standardization, simplification, and innovation. With this transformation, Gordon Foodservice EDI now utilizes a centralized platform for both mapping and communication. This has allowed us to create a dynamic team who can shift distribution areas depending on business priorities, with our data originating from one source.
Great. Excellent. Appreciate that. And just moving on to our next question for Ken. What data-driven changes have you implemented in response to recent industry trends?
So I'm going to answer that question, but before I do, I got to give a quick shout out to Chelsea and the folks at GFS. They're a key partner for us, and the ERP solution change that they just went through was hands down the easiest transition we've ever been through, and we've been through a lot of them. So well done, Chelsea. So from data, sorry, got a little feedback there. Data-driven changes. Obviously we're looking very closely at FSMA like everybody else, trying to figure out what our path forward is going to look like, how we're going to meet the timing around that. But we're also working with our distribution partners, our manufacturers, and GS1 to get more product information. We always want more and more and more. We get the basics, but as additional information is added or becomes available, we're constantly pushing our distributors and our vendors to provide that information to us. As I said earlier, we've got quite the reputation in the industry for wanting everything we can get, and we want it right. One of the conversations that we're having right now is around UPC codes. So we've gone to barcode scanning for our inventory and ordering solution. Most of our distributors will provide us with the UPC code that's on the case, but that doesn't help us when we get down to the inner pack or to the actual item inside that inner pack. So a lot of conversations in-house right now about, how do we get those UPC codes tied back to the individual item all the way up to the case level. The downstream impact of needing all of this data is that, pushing those distributors and pushing the manufacturers to report more and more. It's a really high priority for us. Accurate data, again, is of paramount importance to us. A bad min or a G10 means someone has to manually research and map an item. We want those mapping processes to be as automated as possible to support our internal and our customer-facing reports, as well as conducting market basket analysis across, similar products to ensure that we're buying the product that's the best value for our needs.
Great. And for that automation, Ken, just as a follow-up, do you how much do you guys use AI to help automate that versus kind of manual? Like, can you share a little bit about?
So from an AI perspective, at this point, we're just starting to dip our toes into that water, quite honestly. It is something that we're looking at on multiple fronts, even down to the standpoint of, being able to better forecast the number of covers we're going to have in a specific location on a specific day based on how many people have to come from different buildings and what the weather is that day. So there's a lot out there for us to explore. We definitely want to take full advantage of it. It's one thing Foodbuy is very careful about. We want to do it right the first time out of the gate, and ensure we can derive as much value from it as possible.
Great. Appreciate that additional insight. Last question for you, Nathan, specifically for you. Can you give examples of how your solution has enabled transformation in the food service sector? I know you guys work in multiple different areas of food and beverage. So any examples that you can share or case studies?
Yeah, absolutely. On the food and food service side of our business, there's still a lot of complexity in space around manufacturer rebates, about operator rebates, claim management, deviated claims with distributors. When you kind of get into the complexity of how product moves through the supply chain in food service, the problem that most companies are trying to deal with is one of visibility and transparency. The manufacturer wants to know, for example, hey, that this claim coming in from this distributor is valid, or potentially this claim coming in from an operator is valid. And so we do an awful lot of collection of invoice information. We bring that together, harmonize it across different companies, and try to get to a transparent set of information that companies can agree upon. Right, that enables them to be best situated, right, to make sure that the claims and the payments that are flowing through the system are being done in the most accurate and most transparent way. Another big topic of area right now is FSMA 204 compliance. A lot of people look at this problem and they look at it as a transactional problem. How do I label something? How do I track it from point A to point B to point C throughout the supply chain? When in reality, FSMA 204 is a data problem. Right? It's really about understanding the FTL list. It's really about understanding the products, the consumption, the makeup of your product solutions and how they impact the different reporting requirements that are out there. And so having good structure around how that information moves. This is one area you mentioned, AI, that I think is going to be revolutionary in this FSMA space, because the old ways of doing things in terms of labeling things and then tracking it isn't the solution. That's going to be the solution that's going to manage this compliance on a go-forward basis. It's going to be a lot more about how I can match information as it exists from one area to the next. And as data moves, that there's visibility to that. And more importantly, how it is that it connects to what's important in my systems. So really excited, I think, about the presence that it's going to have in FSMA 204, right, in those areas. And then finally, we partner with a lot of companies just on master data management. Getting some of that core foundational data that we've talked about right, making sure that product SKUs match, making sure locations, end units, understanding, across the board what companies are trying to do with their information is an area that we spend a lot of time and focus.
That's great. Thank you for that. And we do have a question from the audience. Daniel asks, and this is a question for all of you. How do you envision AI being helpful to your organization specifically? I know some of you have already addressed certain applications of how you're using AI, but anything else that you think, other areas of low-hanging fruit that AI could be helpful in your respective organizations? Would like to take that one? Maybe Ken first.
From an operator standpoint, I don't think we even know all the possibilities yet. I think there is a tremendous opportunity out there to reduce the amount of manual work that is taking place in our units. especially around, even things like predictive ordering, things of that nature. Let's make it easier for the unit operator. Let the less time our chefs have to spend in the back storerooms placing an order, we want to free them up to be in front of the customer, to be out there interacting with their clients. And I am very hopeful that AI is going to help us speed up a lot of the processes around ordering, inventory, things of that nature. And I'm going to rely on my friends at iTradeNetwork to help us with that. So, Nathan, don't say you weren't warned.
I wasn't warned. I look to it. I think one of the best places for companies in this space to get started is in machine learning, right? As you can process information through some of those large language models, you get a better understanding of how, specific to this industry, data flows in a very specific way. I can tell you that, product that's grown in a specific field from a specific grower shipper that ships to a specific distribution center on the food service side is likely going to end up in a certain geographical region, right? Because the industry follows best practices to try and minimize cost and to manage efficiently through the supply chain. And so when you look at all of that historical data and feeding it into some of these language interpreters and understanding, right, the information, then you can start making good decisions about, okay, wow, the system is showing that, hey, I might run low on a particular product, or I might go out of stock. And so those predictive analytics associated with changing the business become a lot more powerful. And so I think machine learning is one area I know is going to have a tremendous impact, and then you can extend that to those learning models. You can interact with your customers in different ways through chat mechanisms and other types of mechanisms. But I think there's tremendous power. We're kind of at this unique inflection point, I think, where the hype is there, right? But now people are really starting to see practical solutions that are really being driven from AI. And I think that's only going to increase over the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Great. And I'll open it up to Chelsea and Melissa as well. Like, have you utilized or experienced kind of that predictive ordering or like recommendation engines that AI can provide? Is there anything that you can share there, or is it still sort of like testing the waters on just the reliability and the just the impact that could have on your individual organizations?
So I can start. AI is definitely not my area of expertise. However, it is a very exciting development in the technology space. I can say that Gordon Foodservice is evaluating the opportunities that are available and the benefits that they are going to have on our distribution.
Great. Was there anything you want to add there?
Sure. Well, I had shared really the primary place that we're leveraging AI today is through our product content updates and optimizations and efficiencies. There's definitely a play in this space in terms of if we think about the operator problems to solve, back of the house labor, menu planning, as Kenneth mentioned. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, in terms of how we can support our operators. And then in terms of the predictive analytics, the recommendation engine, sure. Definitely, I think there's a lot of kind of nuances to that in terms of what data is available and taking kind of that full experience picture. So there's almost too many use cases. I think the issue now, Brian, is how do we take all of our great ideas and then you pare it down into the what are we going to test and pilot and learn from, and then what's the next use case and what's the ROI that we're getting, et cetera. So we have a lot of ideas. I think it's a really exciting space to be and to play in.
Great, thanks for that. We have a question from the audience here. Taylor asks, given that we have a manufacturer, distributor, and operator here, how are you all envisioning leveraging these capabilities to help solve larger societal problems? As an example, food waste. Does AI, machine learning, data sharing make such collaboration more likely? And if so, how? Great question. Who would like to take that one first?
I can take a shot at it from the operator's perspective. And yeah, Taylor, that is actually a great question. one of our corporate initiatives is very heavily focused on eliminating food waste. So we actually track in our units what gets wasted every single day, so that we know, we're looking at patterns. What's traffic in our units look like? Are we preparing too much food? Are we not preparing enough? If we don't, what can we, what do we have that's readily on hand that we can backfill with? That's a huge focus for us. One of the programs that we launched a couple of years ago in our units is called Waste Not Wag a Lot, where we actually take leftover food products that are healthy and able to be served to animals, and then they make dog treats, and then they turn around and sell the dog treats in the units, and we donate the proceeds from those treats to local animal shelters. So we're constantly looking for ways when we do have food waste, what's the best way to deal with that. But ultimately the goal is to eliminate it as much as possible.
Great. Anyone else?
I would definitely add, really specifically on the AI side of things, there's a lot about the predictability of information flowing through systems. So we know that food waste still accounts for almost 40%, right? Or almost 40% of all food that gets harvested and grown, it spoils prior to its consumption. And addressing that, I think, is really about changing the mindset a little bit on using some of these predictive analytic capabilities to get better information flow. Right? So many companies are still focused on stockouts. They're focused on trying to solve, the problem of not having product available when we could get a lot tighter. Right, potentially on the information that's being moved, or especially the product that's being moved, from point A to point B. So it's not expiring in distribution centers. It's not expiring before it's even given the opportunity. We know a large part of that food waste still occurs, at the home or within restaurants, but the reality is, a lot of it does spoil, right, within the supply chain. And so AI can change that. They can help you get a better, tighter band around the products that you should be ordering, around the things that you should be doing, right, in order to make sure that you don't have overstock or oversupply. It can help you, for example, adopt different patterns. Instead of doing, first in, first out in a warehouse or distribution center, you can move to what's going to be picked first, right? Because we know in perishables, for example, that the pick date is actually more important oftentimes than the ship date. Right. And so there's just so much data that's out there that when you look at AI, I think a lot of it's going to change, right? The way that we order product and get better visibility to where that product is in the supply chain, so we can just make better decisions.
Great. We have another question from the audience. Daniel is asking about sustainability, and just and it's related to food waste, but I wanted to get your individual viewpoints on how sustainability has been sort of managed within your organizations. Like, let's say 24 months ago to today, and two, how is data and data management helping to solve those sustainability goals within your organizations? Anyone want to take that question?
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in on this one as well. I think a lot of things have changed. For example, in the last 24 months, a lot of carbon footprinting, right? So what is the impact, for example, of logistics and shipping on certain products, some of the things that are coming into market? The data is better now in that space than it ever has been, from my perspective, in the industry. So when you talk about sustainable, one, it's about growing product and manufacturing product in the most sustainable way, but it's also about transporting it and getting it there in an efficient, clean way, right? So that we can, recognize, I think, some of the impact, I think specifically the food and beverage industry can have kind of on the global environment. But I would say so much change. Carbon footprinting, I think, is just one example of that. That when we talk to companies that they're heavily focused on in improving sustainability in food service.
Great, thanks.
I would agree. We've seen a lot of changes in our operations as well, just from the sustainability standpoint. The good thing for us is our customers are coming to us saying, "Hey, we want you to have more and more sustainable products in your units." especially around things like paper and disposables. That's been one that was a big opportunity for us to really look at what was available in the marketplace and go out and contract with specific manufacturers for those products, and then work with our distribution partners to get those products available to us across all of our markets, and bring those into our units. So it's no more plastic forks that aren't compostable, things like that. Very important to us.
One of the things we're doing as well, again, just in terms of my role, seat at the table, it's from an omni perspective. And so as our customers have their sustainability goals and matched with our sustainability goals, and how do we amplify the messaging through different channels, whether it be online, through campaigns, digital marketing, et cetera. And so really having those shared sustainability goals and how do we bring it to life from an experience and digital perspective.
Great.
Melissa, do you find that people are trying to brand and showcase more and more of that, especially on the manufacturer side, trying to, hey, this is a sustainable product solution. This is something that we're leading first with. Do you see that kind of change in manufacturer behavior?
I think it's very much like my earlier comment on everyone's on a different path in their journey. And so it's a big, it depends, Nathan, but I will say the conversation does come up, from time to time in terms of partnership and how do we grow together, and where's our expertise needed to help support our customers in terms of their goals.
Great. And a couple of general questions for for the group here. Some of you have already addressed this, but how do you think? What do you think is the next big trend in food service data management, and how should companies prepare for it? Like you all represent the biggest and the best organizations out there, and so what you guys do on a day-to-day month-to-month basis really impacts the industry. So what is the next big trend, and let's put a timeline in the next 12 months. And we'll start off with Chelsea.
Sounds good. Well, I don't think it's a trend. I think the FSMA 204 regulation is set to change the environment of the data that is going to be accessible, because it's going to need to be accessible by all customers within our distribution networks. So it's from a vendor standpoint, from a distributor and a customer standpoint, there has to be access, and how that's solved is still largely being vetted out.
Right. How about you, Ken?
I would have to agree with Chelsea on that point. I think that's, we're going to be focusing a tremendous amount of energy on that. We're already getting a lot of questions from our customers, and especially from our nutritional teams, about how we're going to address this, what technology is going to help us solve for this. And so, we're talking to anybody and everybody that we can, and learning as much as we can, and quite honestly, still trying to figure it out.
Great. Melissa?
I think they'll continue. I think AI is here to stay. And really, as we think about, as we get even more data, how do we think about the predictive analytics and the insights and what's next, and we'll use it, all of the data, and harness the data, and then how are we thinking about using those analytics and insights to continue to grow, optimize, and having that flywheel, if you will, around the continuous improvement and those opportunities. How do we continue to grow and deepen our partnerships and relationships with our partners, and really be able to share those best practices and learnings? And I still will say that it's the people, process, data, and tech. I don't actually think that it's going to be just a technology solve, but it's how are we harnessing our ways of working and learning and testing as we continue to grow together.
Yep. Nathan?
Yeah, I think AI, I think she nailed it. I think AI is here to stay. I believe that it's going to change the way that we do things. FSMA is something that's very close, right, from a compliance perspective, approaching very rapidly. I think that there's ways that you can use AI, right, to address some of the complexities in FSMA, but I agree with the panel. I mean, those two areas I know are hot topics. They're hot buttons, and they're things that every one of our customers that we're speaking to is speaking about constantly.
Yeah. And as a follow-up to that question, I know that I think there's a lot of agreement that AI will be have that disruptive nature, but there is the people side of learning how to use AI and learning how to use it across different sectors, but also within organizations. How is that going to be solved, right? Because you have if let's say you've been a sales guy for 20 years. And now you got to use ChatGPT or whatever. Like how is that process within your own organizations, and how is a learning process going so far, and where will it go? Is there a barrier there?
What I think is fascinating is I actually can parallel this back probably to something like the use of Excel. Right, I'm old enough to talk about when that was probably introduced. And what's funny is no one now asks how a salesperson is going to use Excel. No one asks how a finance person is going to use Excel or an analyst is going to use Excel. It's a basic understanding that I think is an expectation that exists now in the industry. And I believe AI is going to follow that same trend. I mean, there's so many easy ways for an individual to start learning about AI through chat.openai, through Copilot, through some of these solutions where you can just query and start asking information. And so I think a lot of it is going to be people that are kind of dipping their toe into that space, understanding that this is a technology that's going to be probably at the forefront of what's happening over the next 4 or 5 years, and that they better start picking it up the same way that they picked up Excel, the same way that they picked up PowerPoint, the same way that they picked up other business tools that have kind of come into the space. And so I think you almost got to test and pilot. I think Melissa said it best, right? Is how do you experiment? How do you test and pilot certain things to make sure that you're learning, and you're learning all the power that some of these things can bring forward. And so I think it's going to be an expectation in a couple of years, and you just got to start working towards it.
Anybody else want to chime in there on that question? Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So I guess as we're closing out this this webinar on transformational kind of food service trends, specifically around data, what's your closing thought here? As it relates to data integration, data management that you want to share with the folks on this call and also the industry at large, and we'll just maybe start off with you, Chelsea, and then we'll close it off with Nathan.
Data is our largest asset that we can leverage throughout relationships. It's it's able to show our success and sometimes our failures, and with making it available to our partners, we can only enhance our relationships through that transparency.
Great. Ken?
I would say trust but validate when it comes to your partners. I manage a team of folks that their responsibility is to reach out to a new distribution partner to start onboarding of invoice data, catalog data, things of that nature. We will provide them with very specific file formats and data requirements. And we trust them to do the right thing and to provide the data in the format and ensure that it's clean. But that data does not move to production until it has been completely thoroughly vetted out by multiple departments. iTrade plays a big part in that as well, because they do serve as our data aggregator for most of our larger distribution partners. But we go through multiple rounds of testing before we'll allow that data into our systems, because we are so focused on accuracy. If it's clean now, chances are it's going to stay clean, but we don't even trust that. We still do audits periodically to make sure the data quality hasn't slipped. Chelsea, your data is still good. But I think that really is that, is something that you have to keep, you have to keep your finger on the pulse. We are looking at AI to take over some of that audit functionality for us, because I really have other things that I'd like these folks to be doing rather than, looking at a tab delimited text file. Fortunately, we do have really good trading partners that we work with, and so it could be much worse.
What's up?
My piece of advice would be leverage data as a strategic asset for your business. Get the foundation right, collaborate with your partners so that it's trusted, updated, clean, all of those things that we had talked about. And also reiterating the importance of data stewardship and governance to be able to do all of those things.
And last but not least, Nathan.
I think they've really said it better potentially than I could have. I love the trust and validate, and I think that is something that everyone should make sure is core to what they do. Right? You have to trust your partners that they're going to give you the good data, but you do have to validate it. Right? You have to take those steps. Leverage the technologies like AI. They're out there to help. But no, I think this panel nailed it in their responses.
Excellent. So that brings us to a close on this great webinar. I want to thank Chelsea, Melissa, Ken, and Nathan for participating in this webinar. Just a reminder that a recording of this webinar will be made available. And thank you to iTrade for being a sponsor of this great panel, of this great webinar. Information to contact them will be made in the email that will be sent out in the coming days. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and look forward to seeing you on a next Food Institute webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Chelsea. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you.